back to the Daily Grind. Thanks for checking out the channel. Make sure to hit subscribe if you're new and hit thumbs up if you're not a baby back pickle biting bitch boy, cause you know what time it is. It's full time.
MMA.
And it is time for the UFC 221 Fight Night pay-per-view. I call it a Fight Night pay-per-view because this card is as stacked as a Fight Night, but it is a actual pay-per-view. Now, you got to keep in mind this card did take a hit. I mean, it didn't take like major hits that you would think would like make it like this understacked, but it is what it is. This is new UFC owners, and it's the beginning of the year, and I mean, we can go on and on for why this card might be a little lackluster as far as your pay-per-view dollars are concerned if you're a casual fan. Now, as a hardcore fan, or if you're from Australia, this fucking card is amazing. I mean, there's a lot of hometown talent on the card in every fight except for the main event. I mean, we've got Mark Hunt, we've got Tuivasa, Jake Matthews, and also Tyson Pedro. So we've got a lot of Australian talent on this card, and it is in Australia, in Perth. And also in the main event originally was Robert Whittaker, so maybe the UFC is catering more to the Australian crowd. But I mean, as a worldwide pay-per-view, or wherever you're from, I know different places, like some places don't pay for pay-per-views. I believe in England you guys have BT Sport, and so there's different politics when it comes to who buys pay-per-views that actually probably doesn't get talked about enough. Like, if you're a big draw in England but they don't necessarily buy pay-per-views over there, does that translate into you not being a pay-per-view draw? I don't know. That's just something I just thought about. We'll talk about on another day. But for right now, this card, as far as $60 is concerned, I mean, I'm fucking broke, so I'm probably not going to be buying this card, but I'll be watching it. And if I just had fucking money in the bank, all of these cards are worth it to me. Every single UFC pay-per-view. I mean, you have to keep in consideration that there's fucking how many fight organizations and leagues around the world now? 130,000. I mean, holy shit, this is the #1 cream of the crop. All these fighters on this card are some of the best fighters on the planet. So I mean, yeah, if you're fucking broke, don't spend your rent money on this card. But if you've got money to blow, definitely buy this card. I would. But with that being said, it is still, I mean, if you take into consideration UFC 226 might have 3 champion versus champion super fights, or even 2. So what, we might have 4 champions on one card, and we don't have any champions on this card. I mean, there will be an interim champion crowned on this card, but as of right now, with the blow to Robert Whittaker, there's no champions fighting on this pay-per-view. Similar to a fight night. So now let's get into these predictions with all of that being said, because as understacked as you might think this card is, it's still going to be a great night of fights, starting all the way from the Fox Sports prelims to the fight night to the pay-per-view. And that's because this is the UFC. I mean, hell, even there's Bellator, who's a #2 right now. I mean, I'm down to watch any Bellator or UFC card. You might beg to differ, but hey, I mean, there's a lot of other fights to choose from. So fucking let's get into the first fight of the night. With all of that nonsense aside, we're going to start with Tyson Pedro versus, holy smokes, Safarov. I don't know his first name, and I got some notes though, so let's get into my notes, dog. Alright, his name is Safarov. He is 8-1 in his professional mixed martial arts career, 0-1 in the UFC. Now, this is a fighter from Dagestan, 31 years old, Mr. Safarov. He was KO/TKO'd by John Vellante in the fight of the night a little over a year ago. Safarov fought in December of 2016. He was KO/TKO'd, and he's taken quite a bit of time, since that fight, so maybe recover and recuperate. So that shouldn't be an issue, but he will be fighting Tyson Pedro. That's the issue. Tyson Pedro is 6-1, 2-1 in the UFC, 29 years old, and he's also a native to Australia. He's a native Australian. So there's a lot stacked against Safarov in this fight, as Tyson is at home. He's been more active. He has more UFC experience, and Safarov has only fought once in the UFC, and he lost that fight to John Vellante. That was his only UFC competition. So I'm picking Tyson Pedro to get the job done. Now we're going to move into Jake Matthews versus Li Jingliang. Interesting fight, Jake Matthews he's fought a lot of his UFC career in his native town, Australia. Anywhere in Australia the UFC goes, Jake Matthews is on the card a lot of the times. I mean, he's fought 8 times in the UFC, and maybe 6 or 7 of those fights have been in like Australia. So I mean, that's pretty nice to be able to fight in your hometown that much. So But the thing is, Jake Matthews is 1-2 in his last 3 fights since losing to Kevin Lee. Actually, Kevin Lee was one of those last 3 fights, but either way, Jake Matthews is 1-2 in his last 3 fights. He lost to Kevin Lee at 155 pounds, then he moved up to 170, where he lost his first fight at 170 pounds via split decision to Andrew Holbrook, and then Jake Matthews lost, or most recently after losing that split decision, he won a split decision over Bojan Veličević. So, long story short on Jake Matthews is he is 1-1 since moving to welterweight, and both of those fights were split decisions. He's going to be fighting Li Jialang, who is fighting out of China on a 4-fight winning streak, wins over Bobby Nash, Frank Camacho, and most recently performance of the night, first round KO TKO over Zach Atto. Li Jialang ain't nothing to fuck with. He's 14-4 overall, 6-2 in the UFC. I'm going to be going with Li Jialang in this fight, although Jake Matthews is the native, because Li Jialang is a better wrestler than people assume, because he's been winning a lot of his fights on the feet, been knocking guys out. But he actually has a background in wrestling, and he's also going to be the bigger fighter, presumably, in this fight, as Jake Matthews used to fight at lightweight, and he looked like the smaller fighter in his last fight, if I recall, but he was still able to score like 4 takedowns and win the fight, win the split decision. But I'm going to be picking Li Jialang to get the win here. He's on a 4-fight winning streak, knocking guys out, better wrestler than people think. Li Jialang to get the win on enemy territory. Now we're moving to a motherfreaking heavyweight fight, one of the 2 heavyweight fights of the night, well, on the main card. Cyril Asker versus Tai Tuivasa. Cyril Asker, Tuivasa's from Australia, so he's going to be the native, but Cyril Asker is probably better than you would think. He's 9-3 overall in his mixed martial arts career. He's 2-2 in the UFC. That you might not think that's impressive, but I'm telling you, Cyril Asker has fought better competition than you would think if you go to a Sherdog record. All the way back to before the UFC, Cyril Asker has been fighting guys with good records, 16-3, 10-1, like good guys outside of the UFC, and now he's fighting UFC competition. He's 2-2 in the UFC. One thing about Cyril Asker is he has not been to a decision yet in the UFC. He's coming off of a second-round submission win over Hu Yazong, who was making his UFC debut, so that win wasn't too much stock in that. But before getting that win over Hu Yazong, he was KO'd by Walt Harris in the first round. So Cyril Asker, his UFC record may be a little deceiving, as he doesn't look as talented as he probably is. But this is the heavyweight division, and when you're fighting a guy like a Walt Harris, or anybody, you can get knocked out in the first round, no matter what division you're in, and especially in the heavyweight division. So Cyril Asker is 2-2 in the UFC, but he's better than a lot of people might think. Now Tai Tuivasa, who's at home, or Tai Tuivasa, he's 6-0 as a professional fighter, 1-0 in the UFC, and he earned performance of the night via first round KO over TKO over Rashad Coulter in his UFC debut. Tai Tuivasa has won all 6 professional fights via first round KO TKO. So neither one of these guys have been to decision in the UFC. Tai Tuivasa has never been to a decision in his entire career, and he's also at home. So I'm going to be picking Cyril Asker to win this fight, because he's been fighting and beating really tough guys even before the UFC, but he'll be fighting a younger, bigger guy in enemy territory. Now, I got to pick Asker as he's more experienced, and Tuivasa has never been outside of the first round in his professional MMA career. This is the heavyweight division, though. Anything can happen, and these guys have not been to a decision in any, so don't blink for this fight for sure. Tai Tuivasa can win, but I'm picking Cyril Asker. Even though my fucking, I crossed out the wrong guy, family. Hold on, we gotta change that. How the hell does that work? Holy smokes, full-time family. You guys ready to take this ride? Alright, we gotta do, you guys can still see my predictions and shit. I can talk you through these while I'm changing that. But Curtis Blaydes versus Mark Hunt. Holy shit, that's the fight of the fucking, that's one of the fights I'm most interested in, to be honest, because oh my god, going into this fight, bro, I wanted to pick Mark Hunt. Now I'm going to talk to you while I'm multitasking, so we'll see how this goes. This is Cyril Asker. I'm picking him to win, so you got to X him out. Oh, that was ugly. Alright, there we go. Now, Curtis Blaydes versus Mark Hunt. Man, going into this fight, I thought I was going to be picking Mark Hunt to win. And God, that's just not what's happening. After I did the research, holy smokes, Curtis Blaydes is low-key one of the best up-and-coming rising heavyweight prospects in the world, let alone the UFC. Yeah, I know it sounds like a lot. It is a lot, but it's the truth. Curtis Blaydes ain't nothing to fuck with, and I will explain as soon as I cross out Yoel Romero. Now, let me get back to my notes now that I'm done crossing them out. So you do see now that I'm picking Cyril to win the fight. Tuivasa is 6-0. He's at home, never been outside of the first round. I'm picking Cyril. Now let's get to the Curtis Blaydes Mark Hunt fight. Holy shit, I should put like a fucking heart around this fight. This fight's gonna be good. It might be a little sad because this might be a bad fight for Mark Hunt for multiple reasons. So let's just get into it. This will probably be the most in-depth I go for any of these fights. Now, let me explain. Going into this fight, before I did my research, I saw Mark Hunt on social media posting pictures. This nigga's got abs for the first time that I've ever fucking seen it. Since I've been a fan in my casual Rampage Jackson, fucking those days and shit, Rampage Anderson Silva. Mark Hunt, I'm telling you, this nigga looks like he hasn't even smelled no KFC for this fight camp. This nigga's got abs, and I was like, yo, whoever he's fighting is going down. But then you do the research on who he's fighting, and you realize, I don't think that abs can save my boy Mark Hunt this time. Fuck, or even, I just don't think they can save him. It's possible. Mark Hunt's one of the most experienced strikers in the UFC and one of the most experienced fighters in the heavyweight division. But the problem is Curtis Blaydes is an up-and-coming killer Thundercat prospect. Holy smokes, let's get into it. Curtis Blaydes is 8-1 overall. I believe he's 4-1 in the UFC. One of those wins was overturned. Actually, I think he might be 6-2. And let me see. Actually, he's only got one loss. I've got UFC.com right here, homie. I'm not about to get it wrong because my boy Curtis Blaydes is a beast. He's 8-1 overall. He's 4-0 in his last 4 fights. One of those fights was overturned because he was smoking the devil's lettuce. My boy Curtis Blaydes was smoking that reefer and got one of his wins overturned. But before, okay, yeah, 4-1 in the UFC. I was not wrong. He lost his UFC debut to Francis Ngannou, and since then he's won 4 fights in a row. One of those fights was overturned because Curtis Blaydes was smoking that ganja either right before or after his fight, so it got overturned. Even though that's pretty dumb. You smoke a fucking blunt to celebrate your win, or you smoke a joint, you hit a bong or anything, you might fuck around and forget. You might, who fucking knows what could happen, but it's weed, people. I know a lot of people don't get that argument and don't care for that because I guess weed can be performance enhancing, you could argue. So hey, it is what it is. It's the rules. Don't smoke the shit 24 hours before or after the fight. He did it. It got overturned, similar to Kelvin Gastelum, Vitor Belfort. If you recall, Kelvin Gastelum knocked out Vitor Belfort, and then his win was overturned because he was puffing on the ganja. Now, Curtis Blaydes is on a 4-fight winning streak, and all of them have been dominant. He lost to Francis Ngannou, who he actually took down twice in the fight, but it was TKO doctor stoppage. Now, that was also his UFC debut, maybe Francis's UFC debut as well. But Curtis Blaydes is a former Division I wrestler. He's only 26 years old. He's got longer legs and reach than a lot of these other heavyweights, including Mark Hunt. His wrestling background means he's not going to be gassing out, like a lot of these other heavyweights might. His wrestling background should solve any cardio or grappling issues that a lot of these heavyweights encounter. So Curtis Blaydes also has been knocking dudes out, beating dudes up on the feet. He outstruck Cody East in their fight, knocked him out in the second round, dominated Adam Milstead, 8 takedowns before winning the fight in the second round. That was the fight that was overturned. Daniel Omlinchuk, Curtis Blaydes outstruck him. Curtis Blaydes also in his most recent fight, Alexei Olenek. Now, those aren't the biggest names in the heavyweight division, but Curtis Blaydes has been doing work to these people. So with that being said, this is going to be Curtis Blaydes' biggest fight of his career for sure. But Curtis Blaydes ain't nothing to fuck with. Now, we know Mark Hunt is 1-1 since losing to Brock Lesnar at UFC 200. That fight at UFC 200 was overturned whenever Brock Lesnar's drug test resulted. It showed that he tested positive, doping violation, fight was overturned. Brock Lesnar sued the UFC, Dana White, and Brock Lesnar, and their whole fucking he sued a lot of people after that fight. Like, they all knew he was cheating. Since then, Mark Hunt has went 1-1. He beat Derek Lewis, who looked like he may have gassed out, but he also said he had a bad back for that fight. So that was Mark Hunt's win since the Brock Lesnar situation. Mark Hunt was scheduled to fight Marcin Tybura in Auckland, I believe, or in New Zealand. And the fight, Mark Hunt got pulled from the fight because, remember, he did an interview that stated that he was having early onset symptoms or stages of CTE. So Mark Hunt was pulled from the fight by the UFC and was replaced with Fabricio Verdum in the main event. After that, Mark Hunt got cleared by the UFC and the UFC's doctors. He had to go through special tests because of what he said and the reasoning. It wasn't just normal medicals he had to clear. But after he cleared his medicals, he's now scheduled to face Curtis Blaydes in the co-main event of UFC 221. And Mark Hunt's looking really good ahead of the fight. I mean, as I said, he's got abs for the first time and since I've seen, and so he's in great shape going into this fight. But Curtis Blaydes, man, I really think he's a special talent and somebody to keep your eye on. So I'm picking Curtis Blaydes here to get the win here. I don't even know if Curtis Blaydes is ranked. If I'm not mistaken, he might be in the top 15. He is. Actually, I got this fucking UFC pulled up right here. Curtis Blaydes is ranked number 9. That's dope to see. He's definitely deserving. Mark Hunt's ranked number 5. So if Curtis Blaydes can get this win, he will move up to the top 5 ranked heavyweights in the world, which would be dope to see. And I think he's only 26 years old and can be a top 5 heavyweight. Curtis Blaydes, I think, has more potential in the heavyweight division than even a Francis Ngannou because he's got the wrestling and the cardio and he's a lot younger. I mean, honestly, we don't really know how old Francis Ngannou is. No, I'm just playing. All right, let's move into the main event, man. Yoel Romero, Luke Rockhold, interim title fight. Robert Whittaker was replaced by Yoel Romero when he had got diagnosed with staph infection to his organs pretty bad. So now we got Yoel Romero versus Luke Rockhold in the main event. I'm going to be picking Luke Rockhold, as you can see in this fight. Yoel Romero is 12-2, you know, in his professional career. Luke Rockhold is 16-3. Luke Rockhold, former UFC champion, but Yoel Romero is 8-1 in his last 9 fights, coming off of a unanimous decision loss, though, to the current champion, Robert Whittaker, at UFC 213, which was also an interim title fight at the time. So it's pretty funny to think Yoel Romero is fighting for the interim title versus Luke Rockhold, and his most recent fight was fighting for the interim title versus Robert Whittaker. So he couldn't get the job done versus Robert Whittaker. Now he's going to get another crack at the interim title versus Luke Rockhold. And that you have to keep in mind also that Robert Whittaker was essentially on one leg as he hurt his leg in the first or second round of that fight. And before fighting Robert Whittaker, Yoel Romero was coming off of that win over Chris Weidman, TKO in the 3rd round, after beating Jacare via split decision. A lot of people might have thought Jacare actually beat Yoel Romero, but Yoel Romero got his hand raised and went on to fight for now his 2nd interim title versus Luke Rockhold, who is 6-1 in his last 7 fights. Luke Rockhold's coming off of a 2nd round KO or TKO over David Branch. Since losing his belt, if you recall, actually David Branch tapped the strikes in that fight, but David Branch did land some big shots on Luke Rockhold in the 1st round. So if you thought Luke Rockhold's chin was a question after his Bisping fight, David Branch landed some shots in the 1st round. Luke Rockhold was able to gather himself. You remember he was against the fence and he like told everybody, calm down, I got this. You know, he like shook off the cobwebs and fucking ended up getting the win, dominated David Branch from that point with his grappling. So Luke Rockhold has Luke Rockhold actually, coming into this fight, you would think Yoel Romero is a better wrestler, which is probably true, but as far as grappling, when you factor in jiu-jitsu and wrestling, Luke Rockhold's probably got the better grappling in this fight because he's got the better jiu-jitsu, I would say, and his wrestling is not trash, you know what I'm saying? So he's got great wrestling on top of great jiu-jitsu, as where Yoel Romero just has like exceptional wrestling, and his jiu-jitsu, I'm sure he's got jiu-jitsu skills, but he's not known for submitting guys or his jiu-jitsu prowess. Yoel Romero's not. So with that being said, this is going to be a great fight, but I feel like Luke Rockhold has better cardio and arguably better grappling, as I said, and probably better striking. Now, Yoel Romero's coming off of a loss to Robert Whittaker, who injured his leg, as I said, in the 1st round or 2nd round. Yoel's a beast, and he can for sure KO Luke Rockhold at any moment. But I feel like Luke Rockhold is the better overall fighter and the former champion. So I'm going to go with Luke to get the win here and then face off, maybe unify the belt with Robert Whittaker later on this year. So those are my predictions, man. UFC 221 Fight Night pay-per-view. With that being said, it is what it is. Let the full-time family know your predictions and what you think in the comments. I am out. And P.S. we got some part-time predictions. Now, the mini microwave couldn't make it, so we've got equal pay MMA. Get it? I'm full-time, he's part-time. It's a girl, equal pay. All right. All right, you ready to do your predictions? You ready? All right, let's get straight to it. We're going to do the co-main event and the main event. Who do you got out of this guy and this guy? Just point to him. This guy, you picked Curtis Blaydes. Okay, he looks like our cousin, John Michael, huh? All right, she picked Curtis Blaydes. And who do you got? Luke Rockhold, this guy, or this guy, Yoel Romero? This guy, Yoel Romero. Hey, you're picking all the dark guys. Are you racist? Just playing. All right, it is what it is, full-time family. Let the full-time family know what you think in the comments. I'm out. You're next. All right, and this is volunteer MMA. She's too little to get paid. Who do you got, this guy or this guy? You just tell me. Hurry up quick. You picked this guy? Uh-oh, we got a sister beef. She picked Luke Rockhold. Holy crap, full-time family, we're out.
Da 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 da. It's the motherfucking DOWG.